So the trailer has finally dropped for Dead Space, and it's not a sequel. It is a remake, which was a little surprising, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'm actually really excited for this. For a long time, a lot of us Dead Space fans, regardless of how you feel about the third one, still wanted the series to continue. But after the closing of Visceral Games, I believe it was in 2013 or 2014, a little bit after Battlefield Hardline came out, the studio that made Dead Space closed down. So we were kind of up in the air. It was kind of up in the air with what was going to happen with the series. And honestly, for a short period of time, I just thought they weren't going to do anything with it. Maybe it's because I know EA had expectations for the third game to sell very well, and it didn't sell very well. And there's a lot of reasons as to why, which we'll get into. But yeah, I was a little iffy about if anything was going to happen in the series, or they were just going to kind of leave it where it was. But there's been a lot of talk online of bringing it back in some form or fashion. And for me, I thought what was going to happen with it, or before the announcement of it being a remake, is I thought they were going to remaster it like in a bundle trilogy, much like how Mass Effect Legendary Edition handled it, where you had Dead Space 1, 2, and 3. They maybe touched up on the first one a little bit, even though there's not really much they needed to touch up on. Add in all the DLC and package it in and give it to us for, $60 or so. To me, that made much more sense because those games, well, they all still look really good, especially on the computer still, and you can get mods of them for whatnot. But it'd be nice to finally have access to it on both the PS4 or PS5 and the Xbox Series X and so forth. So I'm a little disappointed that they're not going that route, and instead they're remaking the first one. And I'm a little disappointed that they're remaking the first one because the first one's just really, really good. It's kind of like Resident Evil 4, where they're remaking that, but there's really no point into it. It's both of those games are masterpieces, in my opinion, and trying to replicate the style and the whole feeling of the first one may not come out as good as EA wants it to. But I understand this because, from my understanding, from EA and for the developers, that this was made possible because of how well received Resident Evil 2 remake came out. And I love the Resident Evil 2 remake. That's actually probably one of my more favorite Resident Evil games in general. But the difference between Resident Evil 2 1998 and Dead Space, which came out in, I believe, 2009, 2008, is that Dead Space is still very playable. And even though I love the original Resident Evil 2, I actually prefer playing that over the remake, even though I still think both of them are really good on their own merits. But Resident Evil 2 needed that remake because it had an old control scheme with the tank-style controls, very outdated graphics, and not really a lot of ways to go about playing it. And even if they were to remake it, much like how Resident Evil 1 was remade, it probably still wouldn't go... It wouldn't be very well with modern gamers. I think most modern gamers don't want to go back to those tank controls, even though I personally feel like it enhances the horror aspect of it. A lot of people don't see it that way, so that made sense. But with Dead Space, it just doesn't make as much sense because what can they really remake from it? Much of that game was pretty much perfect in my honest opinion. I think the only thing they could really change is make it more the transitions between levels, make it a little more fluid. I think in the first game, you go into the train, then it loads up the next level. Make it to where the trains, you're actually in it and you're watching it go fly by other places. There's more dialogue options, and we'll get into more of that, what I expect from it. But in general, I was hoping for a trilogy bundle remaster, but we're not getting that. Maybe sometime in the future we'll get that, but we have the remake, so I guess we have that looking forward to. So what am I going to be looking forward to? What should we look for in this remake, and what are my overall thoughts about it? For starters, let's go on the technical aspect of it and who's actually going to be making it. So it's going to be made by Motive. Motive are responsible in part for Battlefront 2, which is a fantastic game, or was eventually it became a fantastic game, because when it originally came out, a lot of people remember it not being very good because of microtransactions. And thankfully, we've already been confirmed that there won't be any microtransactions within this game, which is a godsend, because honestly, EA has been actually doing pretty well with the single-player games. I think they finally come to realize that single-player games are still the way to go, and a lot of gamers still quite enjoy that, which I'm really thankful that they see that, because I know at one point the CEO of EA, I forgot his name, but they mentioned that multiplayer was the way to go for the future, and I'm just glad that they kind of made a 180, and they're having a sequel done for Jedi Fallen Order, And with this game and the Mass Effect, they want to keep continuing that. And then Dragon Quest 4, I believe, not Dragon Quest, my bad. Dragon Age 4 is also not going to be having microtransactions, and it's going to be a traditional single player RPG, which is just really stellar. Another thing to note is that this game is going to be made on the Frostbite engine, which is going to look absolutely gorgeous. If you saw the trailer, the game looked absolutely stellar. I have a 4K monitor, so I was able to see the whole trailer in its glory. I'm hoping it's going to kind of look similar to that. Obviously not as detailed because trailers are always misleading when they come out. They're always a lot not as good looking as they should have been, but it's still going to look really good. Battlefront 2, it looks absolutely stellar because it uses picture-esque photo technology. I forgot what it's called, but a lot of they take pictures in real life essentially, and they bring it into the virtual world, and it looks really good. I think Battlefront 2 is probably like one of the better looking games I've ever seen in my life, to be perfectly honest with you. So another thing to expect, that's about it. I mean, hopefully it's going to run really well. I want to say, I believe from reading an article, that it's going to be next gen only, so it's going to be on PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC. So hopefully that means that we're going to get really fast loading times and stellar looking graphics, and they're not going to hold back on what it's going to look like, which is going to be really cool. So, but let's go on to what to expect from the remake, as in what are they going to change? Because Dead Space 1's combat is already really, really good. It's probably one of my more favorite third-person action horror games of all time. Most of the combat was improved in Dead Space 2 and a little bit 3. 3 had a lot of different issues, but we won't get into that. So what can they change about it? I do think they need to bring in more movement. So, having the ability to roll, maybe to dodge. I don't know about a cover system, just because you're fighting necromorphs is not really a need for that. But I say that because maybe some enemy, though, they need to bring in other different enemies to spice it up. Most of the enemies in Dead Space 1, some fired projectiles and stuff, but most of the enemies are kind of just, hit or miss. I enjoy all of them, but maybe they need to have some more that are more kinetic, and maybe some that, like, they're impervious to your shots unless you stow on some kinetic ability on them, or you freeze them or something. Just a lot more to spice up the gameplay, really. And perhaps bring out the gun customization via Dead Space 3, because I really, really enjoyed Dead Space 3. I know a lot of fans don't enjoy it, but I think one of the best aspects of it was the gun customization, even though you could make like a really overpowered gun. I know when I played it, I had a rocket launcher / machine gun on it, and I eviscerated literally everything, even on the highest difficulty. So, obviously they're gonna have to tweak it, make sure it's not that overpowered, but having to where you can put a lot of upgrades and customize your gun however you want would be really welcome change to Dead Space 1 Remake. And as for environments, I do believe the environments we should be able to explore more of the Ishimura. It'd be cool if we have a lot more outdoor environments that you can go outside the ship, and maybe just some other parts of the ship we just never been to. Such places like that was showcased in like Dead Space movies, Downfall or Dead Space Extraction, and what have you. Dead Space Extraction is the Wii game, and then Downfall is the movie, which I really enjoyed, even though it kind of looked like shit. But maybe incorporate areas into those and bring them in there. And also, they should probably, perhaps introduce the characters in more dialogue data logs, or have some of the characters that were within those movies and other games into the game, just to flesh out the whole experience more, introduce more people, make it a much more, bigger game than what originally already was. One thing I would actually like them to do is to possibly expand the end game area. Kind of spoilers, but eventually you're going to get to the planet at the end of the first game. That's where you fight the giant necromorph thing. But maybe they should explore that area a lot more. They should go to the mining areas, and maybe there's some survivors down there or something. Or there's a lot they could do with expanding the environments of the game. And I think exploring more of the planet side would just be really interesting, and flesh out the ending a lot more than what it was. Like, for instance, maybe they could have the ending set up more of Dead Space 2, talk about Titan, talk about all the other characters that you're going to be introduced, much like in the second game. If you remember, if you played the second game, in the very beginning of the game, you're introduced to a character that like rescues you, and then he dies immediately. And there's a lot of backstory behind him, but it's locked in this mini game called Dead Space Ignition, which I've only watched gameplay of online. I'm never going to play myself because I'm not much of a puzzle guy. But they should incorporate a lot of those different aspects into the main story just to make it much more expansive and, you know, just a much more enjoyable experience overall. And that's one of the biggest things I want from the remake, is to just have a better story. I'm entirely unsure if they should change Isaac from talking. I know a lot of people didn't like Dead Space 2 and 3 because he started talking and they didn't like his personality. I mean, he's just some white heroin protagonist, like, you know, number 6,438. I liked Isaac Clarke. I thought he was a little bit of a simp in the third game, but in the second game he was pretty cool. You know, he killed off all these Necromorphs and survived the Ishimura and all this other bullshit while dealing with his dead girlfriend and whatnot. So he went through a lot of stuff. So I understood his character progression in Dead Space 2, but in Dead Space 3, it was simp Isaac. So I don't want to see no simp Isaac. I want to see maybe a terrified Isaac. I wouldn't mind them talking. It would change the whole environment and the whole feeling of Dead Space 1 for sure. But it's a remake, you know, and you're going to try something different with it. You don't want to make the exact same thing. Resident Evil 2 feels a lot different than its counterpart, Resident Evil 2 1998. I still really enjoy 1998, but that game was a little less serious than the remake for a lot of different reasons. So mainly story, game, a little bit of the gameplay, tweak it up a little bit, but I would like it just to mostly expand story and expand more environments in the game overall. So those are my thoughts on a Dead Space remake. I'm not entirely with the idea of them just remaking it, mostly because I just rather have a remastered trilogy, to be quite honest, or a sequel to Dead Space 3, because if you play Dead Space 3, there's a huge-ass cliffhanger that I would like to get resolved. I guess it's not going to get resolved because they're just going to remake this fucking thing. But, you know, remakes make a lot of money, get a lot more traction, they get a lot more people involved into it because they're not distracted by, like, the number 4 on a game, and they're like, oh, I don't want to play it until I play the other ones. It's like, no, you're going to play this one. So, who knows? Hopefully this game sells well. Hopefully this game is really good, and it warrants a remake of the second and third one. Especially that third one, because they really need to remake that one for sure. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think they should do, what they shouldn't do. Were you disappointed in the remake announcement? Did you want a trilogy remaster like the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, or did you want a sequel? I personally wanted a sequel, but I'm curious to see what you guys say. It's makes it a lot more fun and interesting to see what all y'all have in the comments. Yeah, and with that, this is the end of the video. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day or night, or, you know, wherever you are from. I don't know. Get out of here.